Okay. So just to briefly go through the agenda, we're just going to go through some welcome and brief introductions, which will take around 5 minutes, going through the PLOS academic editor role, what it encompasses, and then the Q&A, a closing session, and a chance to meet other members at the end. There will be quite a bit of information in the following slides, but you've already been introduced to these in your onboarding, so you don't have to memorize any particular information, as you've already been exposed to them previously. But yeah, and this will be a recorded session, so you can look back in your own time. So the introductions. I'll start. So I'm Lisa. I'm from Editorial Board Services team. I'm based in the UK, and I first joined PLOS in 2023 in publishing operations. Previously worked for some society publishers before coming to PLOS. And some things that I do on a day-to-day basis, so involves answering various AE queries, such as relating to editorial manager, some feedback to AEs, as well as some offboarding. So yeah, we'll also pass on to editorial, so that's Joanna, and as well as other editorial board members, and there are some pointers here on the slide if you want to use them.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Joanna and I'm one of the staff editors. So I work on PLOS One predominantly, but I also kind of will help out with some of the other mega journals that you might be on. And I'm based within the physical sciences and engineering team. So that's predominantly the kind of group of AEs that I'll interact with. And so I've been with PLOS just over a year now, and this is my kind of first role within editorial work. So before that, I was postdocing, and so my background is within the environmental sciences, particularly looking at past lake records, past climate, and isotopes. And so my day-to-day is quite varied. So I will communicate with academic editors, usually when you're going through the peer review process. So if you've got any questions about how to handle a manuscript, or concerns about reviewer comments, anything like that, I'm likely to kind of communicate with you. We also oversee the peer review. So if I'm looking at a manuscript and I notice that perhaps there's an issue or something I'd like to discuss with you, then you might get an email from me asking you about that. And also a little bit of author queries as well. So I would kind of be, I guess, more of your port of call for anything manuscript specific that you might want to discuss. Okay. Lisa, how do you want to?
Yeah, so I can, based on my screen, so Bishma Karki, we can go through. Okay, so yeah, just based on the order on my screen.
Hello, everybody. Are you hearing me?
Oh, yes, yeah.
My name is Dr. Bishma Karki. I'm working in different organizations, several organizations, and Tribhuvan University as a lecturer and National Research Council Nepal as a executive chairman.
Great, thank you. And next, Veronica. Veronica.
Hello, everyone. I'm an associate professor at the Mendel University in Brno, and together at the Tomáš Bata University in Zlín in the Czech Republic in Europe. My specialization is focused on e-commerce, online shopping, and also strategic behavior of businesses. So thank you.
And Maher Darwish.
Good morning, everybody. I am Maher Darwish, originally from Syria. Currently, I am doing a postdoc in Szeged University, Hungary. my interests are about functional nanomaterials for enhancing the selectivity and sensitivity of analytical methods for pharmaceutical analysis.
And Mohammed Zishan Bhatti.
Hello, my name is Mohammad Zishan Bhatti. I am working as assistant professor at National University of Medical Sciences in Pakistan. My research interest is drug discovery, molecular biology, and we are working on the cancer biology. Thank you.
And Mary Matthew.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dr. Mary Matthew. I'm a pathologist from India. I'm working at Manipal Academy of Higher Education. How many years have I been an active researcher? 25 years and more. And I serve as the associate editor also of the Global Bioethics Inquiry, which is a scholarly publication of the UNESCO Chair in Bioethics. And I'm from India.
Nice
Thank
to
you.
meet you. Nice to meet you. So I think we're just regarding time. So we can do the introductions. So yeah, it might take some time. So we're going to do a poll. So just going to ask you a bit about yourself, where you come from, as well as your background. So I'm just going to initiate this poll. So yeah, and then we'll get a bigger picture of what everyone's doing and where they come from.
Hi, everyone. Can I introduce myself?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, my name is Associate Professor Jensit Pichailak. I'm from Bangkok, Thailand. My background is obstetrics and gynecology doctor. I'm working at Faculty of Medicine, Sirat Hospital, Thailand. I've been active in research for around 15 years. Yes, and my particular interest is sexually transmitted infection. Thank you.
So the poll, great. So we have quite a spread of career stage here today. So most of us, unsurprisingly, come from one. It's one of the biggest journals of PLOS. And quite a few of us also come from PLOS Climate. So that's interesting. And yeah, so we've got many here today who have 10 plus years of being an active researcher, and quite a few are on multiple PLOS editorial boards. So that's really nice to see. And the majority of us come from Asia, and next is Europe. So yeah, quite a spread here today. So yeah, nice to meet all of you. And we have a chance at the end in breakout sessions to meet each other. So yeah, I've just shared results if you want to see that. So moving on. So PLOS editorial boards. So the editorial boards tend to be larger than subject-specific or society journals to cover the broad scopes and high volumes of the journals. Section editors advise on subject-specific issues and manuscripts and participate on a deeper level in section engagement, whereas academic editors, so you, oversee the peer review process and are responsible to a very large degree in determining what we should publish or not. And AE recruitment occurs through application, subject-specific invitation or referrals. And there is a way to see fellow editorial board members by visiting the linked pages here. So just to go back, the link. So you would come to a page. So this would be for one. So I click one, and it comes to this editorial board page. And you can search by section, by classification, by country or region. So for instance, if I want to search for AEs or editorial board members in food science, in the food science section, this will come, it'll come and drop down, and click that, and you'll see your fellow editorial board members in that section. And if you want to further refine it, if you want to find board members from Egypt, for instance, you can add that, comes here, and it will further filter it for you. And it has all the information here, ORCID IDs, sections, classifications, and some of the research experience here. So yeah, and there are links to other journals, PLOS journals, so you can have a click on these and further explore that. So what the academic editor role encompasses. So in short, AEs oversee the peer review process from the beginning to the end. So just to go through these points briefly, you guys conduct an initial assessment based on the PLOS publication criteria. You find and invite reviewers. You evaluate the feedback, make the editorial decisions, and communicate these decisions to the authors. So AEs play an active role as well in the community. You're ambassadors for PLOS, and you're highly engaged as representatives of PLOS as well. So that's quite important to keep in mind. Okay, so if this is a link over here, so that can also, you come to the editor resources, AE role pack, and you would have been sent this in your onboarding. So what the AE role encompasses here, so you can find that. So the PLOS Code of Conduct for editorial board members. We take publication and research ethics very seriously here at PLOS, and we expect our board members to do the same. You can find this code at the PLOS Editor Center. So if we click this link in the title, it leads us to this page of the Code of Conduct. And it's quite important to go through this, read through it. And if you have any questions, just contact us if you want anything clarified here. So this was shared with you as part of the recruitment and onboarding. So you would have been, you would have seen this already. So that's where you'll find this. So editorial manager, and this is a submission system that's provided by a company called Aries. So we use editorial manager. And when starting out as a new AE, the first thing you'll want to do is update your information. So this is verifying your contact information and institution. Also indicate your areas of expertise, add classifications and keywords, and know how to set unavailability dates. So there is a link to a resource here. So this would be this. So yeah, you'll find all the details here. So getting started. So once you log into your editor login, you just go down, you can add personal classifications. You can add free text keywords if you can't find any particular so descriptions of your research expertise in the classifications. And if you go down here, okay, there's more keywords. You can add an ORCID ID, setting on availability dates, so your start and end date, and you can add a reason if you want. And there is more information here on the to-do list and what you expected to see in your to-do folder for your new assignments coming in. And yeah, so this is another useful document to have. Right. So life of a manuscript. So the manuscript starts with an author submitting a manuscript. It goes through some technical checks. So during technical checks, we look for things such as formatting, image visibility, metadata, and so on. So it goes through initial technical check here. It then goes through some submission scanning, or subscan for short. So this is where our staff editors check for, among other things, scope, so scope fit the manuscript, publication criteria, ethics, and they may desk reject from here as well. So if the paper then proceeds, it's assigned to an academic editor, and an academic editor can send out the manuscript for peer review, or they can reject without reviews. So yeah, and if the paper is sent out for peer review and it comes back, he submits a decision, goes through another pre-revision technical check, decision is then sent to authors. It can be a reject, or it can go through a revise. Author submits a revised manuscript, goes through another revision technical check. But if the manuscript is accepted, it goes through a final technical check, then off to production, and then finally publication. So invitations to handle manuscripts. So your invitations to handle manuscripts come through email. So we can see the anatomy of an invite email over here in this link. So this is a basic anatomy of the email you would get. So it would come from an editorial manager email address or the PLOS.org email address. And so it will include key details of the manuscript that you're invited to handle. It will have the PLOS journal, the manuscript ID, as well as the title, the list of authors. And you can, from the author list, you could also see any potential competing interests with any of the authors. You have links to log in to your EM account to view this manuscript in your new invitations folder. There is a turnaround time of 24 hours to respond to this invite. Just please note, this is a guideline, so it's more for the authors, so we don't delay the manuscript, and so they can plan any next steps for the manuscript. So we just encourage you to respond as soon as you're able. So there's links to accept or decline to handle this paper. And also it's worth to note that academic editors are invited in queues, paced automatically by EM or editorial manager, or triggered when AE earlier in the queue rejects an invite for this to handle this manuscript, or just hasn't responded. So yeah, and you also, if you want to reach out to someone from PLOS, maybe to query about this manuscript in particular, you have the journal email address at the bottom in the signature. And yeah, so you also get keywords and abstract related to the manuscript in the invite email. So most invites are sent by an algorithm used by one or classification matches, which are used by climate, global public health, mental health, and water. Staff will also send invitations if initial rounds are unsuccessful, or if the paper requires special handling, for example, reassigned manuscripts, resubmissions. So we encourage you to read the email invitation carefully, and you always have the choice to accept or decline invitations. And we do have a table to help you to decide whether to accept or decline an invitation. So to go through the accept, if you want to accept an invitation, it's good to consider if you have time to handle the submission all the way through to final decision, if it's in your area of expertise, and you have no competing interests, or it's not suitable for peer review. So if you find that you have time to accept the invite, and the paper you find is not suitable to send up for peer review, but you to reject it, and based on PLOS publication criteria, you can accept the invite and issue a reject decision. Yes, so there are frequently asked questions and comments here if you want to go through them. So something about PLOS match and classification base matching. So just to briefly go through this, the initial AE invite rounds are semi-automated, and editors can expect some out of expertise invitations, regardless of how you get them. So if all editors in the queue either decline or do not respond, PLOS staff will manually send invitations informed by your classifications. So it's important to add your classifications in, your keywords, and it's important to keep these terms up to date. So yeah. So next slide. This is the peer review timeline, summarized and condensed. So just to note here, subject area standards may be different. For instance, economics have a longer peer review timeline, and each manuscript is unique. So a manuscript starts with some initial evaluation, takes around 3 days. Then you need to find and secure reviewers, which may take 1 to 2 weeks. So next 2 to 3 weeks, the manuscript are with the reviewers, and it takes 3 days for an editorial decision to be made, which is expected. And this bit with finding, securing reviewers, manuscript being with reviewers, the decision is repeated for each revision cycle. Yep, so just to emphasize the importance again of handling through to final decision. And next slides will be with Joanna, who will go into more detail about the editorial side of things. So I'll be stopping screen share from here. Okay.
Everyone see a set of slides? Yeah, too many screens. So yeah, I'm going to talk through kind of the process now from the editorial side. So once you've accepted a manuscript, it's your job to assess it first and decide whether or not you think it should go out to peer review. So here I really want to emphasize that you're the expert on the manuscript. So if you're looking at it and you don't think it's ready for peer review, you can reject at this stage. It just needs to, the rejection would have to be in line with our publication criteria. So each journal's publication criteria you can find on the website, but broadly, we're looking for a contribution to the base of scientific knowledge. So that is quite often something that might mean that a paper doesn't proceed to peer review. And for good methodological reporting, that's another area that can sometimes kind of prevent a manuscript from getting through into the peer review process. The other thing to kind of draw your attention to would be that within your, if you've accepted a manuscript, you'll be given lots of information about it. And staff editors, like myself, might have left you notes specifically about the manuscript. So anything we've noticed in those earlier stages that we want to draw your attention to. So this might be that we think it might be of media interest, and we might have left you some information about that. It might be that it's a type of paper where PLOS has some additional policies related to it that we want you to make sure that you check against when evaluating it. So once you've kind of done that kind of initial kind of look at the paper and you've either decided, yeah, it can go to peer review or not, it might proceed to peer review. And you would then start to look for reviewers. So when it comes to kind of looking for reviewers, you've got several ways that you might go about this. So importantly, you need to make sure that the reviewers that you're inviting have expertise in the subject matter, which perhaps goes without saying, but trying to make sure that they're really aligned so that you can get good reviewer comments back. Really need to avoid any potential conflict of interests, and that with the authors themselves. So a good starting point for that might be just to make sure you're not inviting authors from the same reviewers from the same institutions as the authors. Try and have a bit of a geographical spread of reviewers if you can as well. And of course, you should never be accepting to handle a manuscript if you have a conflict of interest with any of the authors anyway, but that's just something else to highlight. Securing reviewers sometimes can be quite challenging because, as I'm sure you all know, everyone's very busy and we're asking for people to do this voluntarily. So there's a few kind of different ways you can look for reviewers. So you might know people from within your own kind of research circles that might be good people to kind of invite, and you might be more likely to get a positive response from that because you know them a little bit. There might be people you've met at conferences and things like that within your network that would be good starting points. The EM database does have a list of reviewers, but they're not curated in any way. So we would always suggest that you then go and check that their recent publications align with the criteria and the expertise of that particular paper. And so we would suggest that you invite small batches of reviewers in each instance. So you don't want to invite loads of reviewers, because then you might end up with them all saying yes, and then you've got a lot to handle. But if you kind of invite maybe 6 to 8 in a batch and then set another batch as alternate, and we're looking for at least one external review as a minimum in addition to yourself, but ideally kind of 2 reviewers would be the best. So yeah, that's kind of some tips and things to look for reviewers. There's lots of information within the quick guide as well, that you can kind of have a look through a bit more leisurely. That should help answer some of your kind of most frequent questions that we get. If you can't find reviewers and you're really struggling, then it's always worth it just reaching out to the journal office, and then staff editors can kind of advise on a kind of case-by-case basis on giving you suggestions or how we might want to handle it going forwards. But yeah, if you're really struggling, it's best to get in touch rather than kind of just to leave the manuscript in this sort of space of nothing happening. So hopefully you've secured your reviewers and they've left some comments, and then it's your job to kind of assess the reviews and decide what you want to do next. And at this stage, I guess the thing I would highlight again is that you're the expert. You don't have to agree with the reviewer comments. So you might get reviewers who give an accept recommendation. That doesn't mean you have to accept the manuscript if you still think there's things that need to be looked at. But we would ask that you put in your decision letter anything that you want them to address. So you'll have 4 decisions available to you. So you can reject based on the reviewer's comments, issue a minor revision, a major revision, or accept the manuscript. And it's always good practice if you can add a little bit to the decision letter yourself. So that might just be that you want to draw the authors to a particular set of comments that you think are really important they address. Or it might be that there's particular comments you don't think they need to worry about too much. One thing that I would draw to you here is something that I see a lot of, is that reviewers might request certain papers to be cited within their reviewer comments. And sometimes these will be on topic and they're really relevant, but it should never be a requirement for them to add those references. So we would always ask, if you see that kind of listing of papers to be cited, that you just put a note into the authors to say, I've noticed this, these are optional, please review and add as you think is kind of correct. And at this stage as well, and this kind of all feeds into that kind of publication ethics. So the reviews that you're seeing, good reviews, they're detailed, they're on topic, and you haven't got any concerns for them. And at that point, you can then issue your decision, and that might be that it then goes back through that cycle of review, or that it goes through to be accepted. So, yeah, just to kind of draw your attention again to those resources for editors. So there's lots of things on there to help you with all of these kind of topics about looking for reviewers and anything like that. So I think that's everything from me. So it's back to Lisa.
Yeah, and there are links over there. So if you want to go through and explore them, they're also just useful information, as Joanna emphasised. Right. So we're going to now move on to the Q&A. So yeah, we're still going to record. Okay. So I've got some questions that came in at registration. So I'm just going to go through them. So one of the questions we had, open them. So can we request the authors to suggest reviewers? So we generally don't recommend this due to potential conflicts of interest with authors suggested reviewers. However, AEs can always contact the authors through the send email action link in EM. So all correspondence with authors are done through Editorial Manager. And we really want to emphasize, though, that if they do solicit recommended reviewers, that all suggestions are thoroughly vetted and not just directly invited. So things like conflicts of interest, some authors may suggest reviewers that they personally know. So that's just worth considering. Another question that came up is, could you explain in more detail the reviewer recommendation service? So the Web of, I'm assuming this reviewer recommendation service is alluding to the Web of Science Reviewer Locator tool, which is integrated into Editorial Manager. So this is available conveniently on the invite reviewers action link of a manuscript, and it will provide a list of suggested reviewers. But also just please note that it's still important to review the suitability of these reviewers before inviting them. And there is a resource, but I can link, so maybe in the chat, where it has a checklist to go through. So if you open that link, there's a finding securing reviewers guide, and there is a checklist on page 1. So there's a suitable review checklist, and you go through, you can just tick these and have these alongside whilst you're searching for your reviewers. You can use various databases such as PubMed, Web of Science as well to widen your search. So yeah, just useful to vet these reviewers. We don't really recommend to use an EM database itself to search for reviewers because it's uncurated to not set up to search effectively. So that's why we do encourage the use of the Web of Science Reviewer Locator in EM. Another question that came up is, how do we choose reviewers efficiently? Again, there's just to refer back to this suitable reviewer checklist. It's useful to have this alongside whilst you're searching for suitable reviewers. So this is also recommending using a systematic process to search for reviewers, for instance. So first you can start with brainstorming some researchers you know. You can go through the Web of Science Reviewer Locator tool, which gives a list of suggested reviewers. Maybe some researchers you've met from conferences, from the general literature, who may be relevant for the manuscript that you're handling. You can also do a wider database search using PubMed, Web of Science, Google Scholar, go through reference lists. And there are some tips. So if you invite early career researchers, for instance, they generally have more time and willingness to handle manuscripts than more senior researchers. And also on Editorial Manager, you can set up alternate reviewers on there. So if your previous reviewer declines or doesn't respond, the next reviewer in the queue gets invited. So we usually recommend you invite 8 reviewers in the first round and then queue the rest as alternate or backup reviewers. And the next question was, how many reviewers are the minimum required for a manuscript? As mentioned, we recommend academic editors to invite 8 reviewers in the first round and then queue the rest as alternates on Editorial Manager. So yeah, so that's the questions that we received at registration. Are there any other questions that you would like to ask, if anyone from the board here today?
Okay, so may I ask, can you hear me? Sorry, because I'm at the airport.
Yeah.
So for example, if we are sending those 8 invitations and then we also select alternative reviewers. So it means, for example, if the first, if 2 reviewers accept, so how many reviewers do we need from those alternative ones? So they are going to, so the PLOS one is going to send all the time invitation for reviews until we cancel the rest, or, for example, until we have 3 reviewers.
Joanna?
So how many reviews do we need? So 2, 3 of them. And my question is, if PLOS one keeps sending invitations till we cancel the rest of the alternatives, for example, alternative reviewers.
Yeah, so yeah, ideally you would want, say, 2 reviewers to provide comments, but we can proceed on just 1, in addition to yourself. So that's kind of the first part of your question. The system will automatically uninvite the reviewers if they don't respond to the invite within so many days. So in that sense, you don't have to worry about terminating them. Once you've got, say, 1 or 2 reviews that you're really happy with, you can then terminate the rest of the invites and then issue your decision. So you don't have to wait for them to come back. And then this also kind of comes to just making sure that you're not having a really long list of alternate ones within the system or inviting a huge batch to start with. So if you do those smaller batches, it'll be easier to manage and keep track of yourself as well.
So, okay, so for example, if I have already 3 reviewers that agreed to make the review, so I
Yeah.
should cancel the rest, because if not, if I don't cancel the rest, you are going to keep sending the invitations to other reviewers, right?
Until you start getting them back in. So there's an element of automation, but if those other ones don't respond, they will get uninvited automatically.
Okay.
And they'll only be backfilled with any that you've got set as alternates anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so if you've only set, say, 3 as alternates and then they filled in and they've not responded, then it will stop. It won't just keep inviting anybody.
Okay, thank you.
Last question following the reviewer's invitation. Can you invite your colleagues to review, to be a reviewer, or it's a conflict of interest?
Yeah. So it depends on the number of reviewers you've got a little bit. So if there's one colleague that you've worked with quite, or is based in your institution, that's okay. But we would want at least one other completely independent one to kind of avoid that any potential bias, because it's likely that you and your colleagues perhaps work in a very similar way that might be different to the author. So it's good to have that spread. So within any discipline, there's obviously probably only going to be so many people that are going to be really on topic. But we would say to try and have a good spread of reviewers. So I would try and not invite your colleagues directly if you can, and to make sure that you've got at least one other reviewer who's not connected. Would you want to add anything there, Lisa?
I think that covered most of it. Just to ensure, I think the most important thing is ensure they're not they don't have competing interests, both with the AE but also with the authors and things to consider. Just like I think one of the factors is not sharing the same affiliation, but of course it's in the guide with like what to consider, because there may be sort of exceptions. And if you're not unsure, then you can just contact the journal office, and they can confirm any sort of
So mainly a conflict of interest is like we would look for as staff editors if you've published with people within the last 5 years. That's kind of our main check that we would do. But yeah, institutions, we would try not to invite from the same institution. But obviously sometimes they're really big. So that's why there's some caveats to that I expect are all outlined in the guide, a bit more detailed.
Yeah, I sent out the reviewer invitation, say sent to 8 or 10.
Yeah.
And the response you expect is usually people will respond to someone they know. And for among these 10 reviewer invitation, one is my colleague that agreed to review the manuscript. The other is someone that I know. So I don't know whether they will constitute a conflict of interest, even though I send out, follow the rule to send out multiple review invitation. But usually people don't know your name. They tend not to accept your invitation.
Yeah. So I guess the main conflict of interest we'd look at is whether they've got conflict of interest with the authors.
No.
And then, yeah, so I mean, you're going to know people that you invite. I think that's slightly inevitable because you're experts in that area. But again, yeah, it's looking at if it's people that you publish with frequently, then that would be something that we would consider more of a conflict that we would perhaps look into a bit more. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I'm just going to include a link for more information there on competing interests between editors and reviewers. So it's a link actually in the guide, but it may answer a few questions. But also it's worth considering, so regarding competing interests. So I'm just going to go back to the resources for editors. Let's go competing interests. So there's also, yeah, not located in the same institution. Just completely lost it, but it's different guys somewhere. Okay, I'll come back to it. But there's also a tendency for AEs to invite the same reviewer they know for multiple manuscripts, and that's something that we don't really encourage, unless they're quite relevant to the manuscript. But we encourage you to diversify that reviewer pool. So yeah, so just include that link, which might be useful. And also, yeah, that's it. So also another thing that we tend to send feedback to for AEs is that we don't, so reviewers shouldn't have the same well, the agreed reviewers, for instance, shouldn't have the same institution as each other. And that could be quite an issue. Yeah, so that's one thing to consider. There's also another question. I think, Joanna, you may be best to handle this. So by Simon, so he says, I had 2 manuscripts with revision decisions, but they later disappeared from my box. Does this mean the authors withdrew their papers? I'm thinking there could be various reasons for this, but
yeah. So usually when so there's a few reasons why a manuscript might disappear from your inbox. So yeah, one option is that the authors might have pulled the paper. The other is that it may have a staff editor may have been into the system for a whole variety of reasons with other concerns to do with the manuscript and issued a decision. Usually if a staff editor is going to intervene on a manuscript, you will have received an email from the staff editor. So they might say, that might be because they've got an issue that they're going to handle with it, or it might be that they've been trying to contact you and they've not had a response. And therefore, to keep the manuscript moving through the system, they might be reassigning it to another academic editor. Again, you should always receive an email from the staff editor who's making that change, just to let you know before we do anything. Yeah, they're probably the main reasons I can think of why it might have disappeared from your account. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it could be just editorial manager glitches.
Yeah.
So if still really confused where the manuscripts have gone, contact the journal office and we can further investigate. If it's a technical issue, then we can resolve that. Usually you can just send screenshots or just send the manuscript ID, and then we can try find again proxying into your editorial manager account and see what's happened. There's another question by Shyam Sundar. So can the editor be a reviewer, having a dual role? Yes, an academic editor can also be a reviewer. If you specifically mean can an academic editor who's handling a manuscript also be a reviewer for the same manuscript? In these cases, you would have to have at least one external reviewer besides yourself. If you do review that same manuscript you're handling as an AE, you would have to sign your name at the end of the decision letter, just so that the authors know that you're also reviewing for their manuscript, so they know the comments are from you. So there's no anonymous reviewer as an AE. So yeah, that hopefully answers that question. Yeah, so for the same manuscript, an editor can be a reviewer too, but yeah, but that manuscript has to have, so there's this general rule where you'll have to have at least one external reviewer besides yourself for a manuscript. And if you decide to review for that manuscript as well, it's just you cannot anonymously review that manuscript if you're handling it as an AE.
Hi, I have a quick question. Hi, everyone. This is Jay. It's 9:15 p.m. Australia. So my question is how to deal with incompetent reviews. So, for example, if you are an expert in an area and you know the reviewer hasn't really spent any time, just wrote a couple of lines and said it's okay, but you know that the paper it needs much more work. So what do you do?
Yeah. So I probably can take this one because I see that fairly frequently. So yeah, sometimes reviewers will leave really brief comments or very generic comments. So they might just be like, improve your introduction, which doesn't really give the author anything. So before you make a decision, we would want there to be at least one good review. So in that sense, I would invite another reviewer. So if you've invited your, say, 8, you've got 2 reviews come back and both of them are of that kind of very general, brief, not very useful kind of set of comments, then I would invite another set. So I'd look for at least another one who's going to provide some more detailed feedback. Would also encourage you to add some comments into your decision letter. That's fine. So when you've done your initial assessment, you've probably noticed a few things yourself. And so when you issue your decision, you'll have the option to leave comments for the author. So you can add some things in yourself that is more specific. But the first port of call, if all your reviews have come back and they're very general and you don't feel like they're giving very useful advice and it's not been reviewed properly, invite further reviewers. If you get to the stage where you say got 4 sets of reviewers have given you comments back or 6 have given you comments back and they're all really brief, I would probably contact the journal office at that point because we might want a staff editor to have a look at what's going on as well with the manuscript, because what we don't want is to end up with like 10 sets of reviewer comments that are not useful, right? So if you've got 1 or 2, I would invite another reviewer to try and get some more in-depth feedback and add some comments to the decision letter yourself as well if you can.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, can I ask some question?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now I'm handling a second round paper, and the first initial review from the first editor is to major revision of this paper. On the second round, I don't know, it's got moved to my account for some reason. I guess the initial editor takes too much time, I guess. And then on the second review, I tried to invite a few reviewer, but right now in total, with the first review, I think this paper got 38 kind of rejected reviewer. And so right now the position is that paper just got 1 review and it is rejecting that paper. So
Yeah.
it's kind of tricky situation, I guess.
Okay, so
what
taken
should I
over.
do? Yeah.
So you've taken
Yes.
over the paper. So you've come in as an academic editor at the second round.
Yes.
Yeah. And you've got 1 reviewer that's come back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just 1 review, and it is rejecting it, while the 38 previous invited reviewer rejected the invitation.
Yeah, so that's okay. So it's second round. So if a paper's come back and it's at the second round, you don't have to have reviewers. You can check yourself whether the authors have responded appropriately. When you took on that manuscript as an AE coming in at a later stage, If there was any concerns from the editorial office, they would have been in the information for editor box. So if we had any special instructions for you, which might have, so it could be, please disregard reviewer 2 or something like that. We might have left some instructions. If we haven't, and you've got one reviewer that's come back, if you're happy with that reviewer's set of comments, you're happy with the author's revision, so you haven't got anything you want to add yourself, then you can make a decision based on that and move the paper forwards. If you feel like you can't make a decision for whatever reason, so whether you might have concerns like we just spoke about, that the paper's not actually been reviewed very well, you can invite reviewers yourself. It sounds like this has had a lot of reviewers invited. And so if
Yes, it previously has like a 28 or something, and then I tried to invite 10 more, but only got 1 back.
Yeah.
So okay. So in this case, I can make decision on that 1 review. I think it's a good review and my own point of view, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so at this stage, yeah,
Thank you.
you can. If you continue to have like problems with it, then yeah, the advice would be to email the journal office and a staff editor can have a look and see what's going on with it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, can I ask one question?
Yeah.
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 So thank you. I am Sovik Das from IIT Delhi, India. So I am currently working as a editor in many journals. So I just noticed many journals, Elsevier, Scientific Reports, Nature, then Cell Press, and other different journals with Springer as well. So I just noticed that when you are inviting reviewers via this +1 portal, okay, we are not linking it with Scopus. If we invite reviewers from Elsevier journals, it takes to the Scopus, and from there we have a lot of reviewers, and we get a lot of metrics like how active they are and how quickly they respond, and all those different criteria they put in. So it's very easy to screen the reviewers and apply. So is +1 going to implement this in their editorial manager as well? Otherwise, it's very difficult for me to invite reviewers.
This might be something.
Yeah,
Lisa,
this is something like yeah, I'm not quite aware of, but it's something I can pass on to the rest of my team just to get a proper answer. So if you want to type in the question specifically in the chat, and I can yeah, find an answer to that. Yeah, that's it's an interesting question.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions that anyone have? So we have around 1 minute before we can close, or we can have 2 minutes if there are any more questions.
Hi, sorry, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Last one. So I've just recently accepted the invitation to join the board, and the invitations that I've gotten so far, they have been quite far outside of my field. And I was wondering if hypothetically by the end of the year, I've not really gotten anything that I feel capable of handling. How does that affect the minimum requirement of 6 manuscripts handled across the course of a year?
Yeah, yeah, it's expected that some of you will get out of expertise invites, and this may be due to things like some algorithm matching, and with that question, yeah, I think that's more of my, I think Dina would know that, Joanna. Yeah, with that, please also add this in the chat, and I'll pass this on to Dina, and she'll be able to answer that quite well.
Yeah,
okay,
I
thanks.
I think there is some scope that if like you're on a topic that doesn't necessarily have lots of submissions and things like that, then it can be looked at a little bit more flexibly. That's my understanding, but yeah, Dina would know.
These questions, so I think it's answered.
I guess the other thing is just to really make sure your keywords is like accurate and as detailed as they can be, to try and minimize the number of out of scope invites that you might find yourself with.
Yeah, those are quite those will be considered. There's also just, I'll pass on to Dina. I've made note of it. So yeah, and if also to include it in the chat so I can get any specifics from the question and then pass this on. There's also just
yeah, no, I just saw there's a question about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
If you want to first, and I can add something.
Yeah, so we do have an AI policy that kind of covers ChatGPT and others like it. It's a bit of a tricky one because it can be quite hard to spot. And so if you see a manuscript that you have concerns about, I think the best bet is to email in and a staff editor can assess it. Authors who use AI tools for like translation and to help with English language, as long as they declare it in their submission, we generally won't have a problem with. But authors shouldn't be just using it to like create a paper from scratch effectively, because it should be an original contribution as per the criteria. Yeah, Lisa, do you know of any other checks that happen?
Yeah, we do go through the AI policy. I don't think we have any detection systems as of yet, but we just go through them. And it's just have a scan or a visual scan, but against some criteria that we go through and some common patterns across other manuscripts. But yeah, much of what Joanna's covered, pretty much yeah.
I would say the other thing that kind of links to that is that you may see reviewers who may have used an AI tool to review. And if that's the case, then that should be escalated to the journal, so that we can just make sure that you're going to get good reviewer comments for the authors as well. And again, like if you take a look at the AI tool policy, that should answer, I think, any questions kind of surrounding that. It's quite detailed.
So there'll be, thanks, Joanna. So there'll be all the questions for today. If you have any further questions, you can just, I think there's an email to send them to. I think Dina's also on hand. I'll also pass on some questions to the team that we weren't able to answer today. So I'm just going to stop
the last
recording.
question, please.
Yeah, that's right.
So back to peer review. Let's say I've got the revision after round 1 and want to send back to the existing reviewers to reassess it, but none of them respond back. So what is the right procedures to handle such situation?
Yeah, so if you've re-invited the previous reviewers and they've not come back, that sometimes happens. That's okay. Again, you have a choice at this stage. You can assess the manuscript yourself and see whether or not you think that the authors have responded appropriately. If you think there's something specific or something that's perhaps a little bit outside your expertise, or you would like another set of eyes to kind of assess the manuscript, you can invite new reviewers at a later stage of review. That is okay. Yeah, sometimes reviewers won't come back to look at the comments again, unfortunately. But you are able to invite additional reviewers at that stage if you feel like that's needed.
Okay, but does that mean I need to also inform the newly invited reviewers of the current progress so that they are aware of this is the the work has passed the first round and ready to move on to the second round? Is that the process, or because if you invite new people, there'll be some new set of comments and coming all shaped and size.
Yeah, and that's fine. They're able to bring in new comments and expertise. That will happen. You can in your info want to say that this is a second round review. That's okay as well. But
okay.
I wouldn't restrict a reviewer to only checking something that's already been written, because they might have their own thoughts that are useful as well for the authors.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
I'm just going to stop the recording here.